At what point did the church fathers start to move into territory, or even people in the history of the church? When do you think they really diverged from sound biblical teaching? Because when I'm looking more into those church fathers, I think of Catholics recommend Aquinas as someone really useful to read, and then there's things that I'm sure you're aware of a lot of things that even Aquinas or others believe that for Protestants would be problematic. So, at what point do we kind of move from safe theology in the tradition to read with a bit more discernment and care?
Yeah, and it's a great question, and it's probably a question you could spend the next lifetime really thinking through. And one of the things, you say, what can we identify what's safe, right? In terms of safe theology, in terms of things to read. Well, for one, I'll say ideas are never safe. They're the most potent thing that you can ever possibly come across. So I'm not so much when I talk with people that want to explore the teachings of early church fathers, or as you get into even Thomas Aquinas. Thomas Aquinas has some amazing stuff on spiritual gifts for sure, and I'm quite passionate about helping people hear the voice of God, and Aquinas has some really good stuff in that. Funny enough, and so I don't so much want to point people to the safest person to read, because then everybody will be stuck with, you can't even read the Bible at that point then.
Yeah.
Right? What I want
Yeah.
to do is help strengthen people so that they can make sound judgments, which I think is one of the things Luther was about.
Yeah.
Was
Exercising discernment.
exercising discernment and going, well, this idea might be a good idea, but this idea might not be a good idea. And, because you could equally, using Luther as the public beating horse right now, you could criticize pretty soundly at this point in Western civilization the idea of salvation by faith alone, not works based, because what it's done is it's disassociated the process of transformation from the communal gathering, and that's one of the big differences between the Protestant church and we'll say the Catholic Church, or the
Yeah.
Orthodox Church, or the Anglican Church for that
Yeah.
matter.
You get into sacraments and that kind of
Yeah,
thing. The sacramental
exactly.
view of theology.
And so I can be saved because I said a private prayer, and I could just hang out in my house for the next 50
Yeah.
years. And that would be like, Luther would never agree with that.
Right.
Right. And that wasn't his point, but it's become, that in some sense, that's kind of what it's become. Right.
Yeah.
It's a lot more complicated than that. And so you can say, well, that's an idea that when you get into, I think it's an 18th century author named William Law. He was an Episcopalian priest. And William Law is like, he's tearing Luther apart left, right, and center, saying you're creating false disciples because what you're telling people is they can be saved without actually doing the work of the kingdom. And that wasn't what Luther had in mind. What Luther had in mind was indulgences, was the corruption in the leadership, and all of this. And in the 15th century, about 50 years before Luther's 95 Theses, the Pope of the day, Asterius Urbanus, the fourth, I think is who it was, he commissions a inquiry into the state of the church, and you could find the letters that he wrote, because he said, like, we've lost all of our influence in the culture and we don't know why. And so he commissions this inquiry. They come back and they say, essentially, you conduct yourself with so much pomp, and you've gotten so far away from what built the church was the blood of the martyrs, people that were willing to die for their teaching. They paired the lifestyle with the teaching, and you can't get back to that. And Asterius Urbanus lays out a number of steps that he thinks the Catholic Church should go through for reformation. Well, they never happened, right? So eventually you produce Luther because the Catholic Church couldn't reform itself. And so, you get to, okay, who's safe to read? Well, none of them are safe to read. But if you're strengthened, you're in a strong supportive community. I know not everybody is. You've got some good kind of mothers and fathers of the faith pouring into you, right? And
Yeah.
you've
People
got
to
some
kind of
sound.
chew it over with.
Exactly. Then I'd say, hey, have at it and go read some of these guys and see what they have to say, because you're going to discover some ideas that will shape how you think. But you're also going to read some and you're going to be like, well, that sounds wrong. Well, now you can actually go through, why does that sound wrong?
Yeah, maybe it's just this lens I'm looking at as to if I was, speaking to maybe a teenager or something, like maybe I'm probably thinking of it from the perspective of, who can I recommend with a clear conscience kind of a thing, because I'm sure someone in our position that's maybe have more experience studying a little bit of theology, they might be able to read Pelagius and glean
Sure.
something from it that was interesting and of note, and be able to discard the heresy that was condemned there, or be
Yeah.
able to go, maybe they would be able to read others from the Reformation and not just dive into pure antinomianism, and or
Yes.
it's
Yes.
like there's always I guess there's always a cutting edge to where like you get something fresh and new and interesting, but it could lead to something
Yeah,
else
for
unhealthy
sure.
if you obsess on that particular point.
And so I will give you some good recommendations in a second. And what I'd say to that is I totally agree with you. And giving someone we'll put it this way. So we're talking about the 17-year-old that's going to want to learn about theology, and I don't want to, what should I learn, right? Or
Right.
what should I read? And if the thing is, if I'm not willing to walk with them and help share the thoughts and let them express how they think, and then help them form how they think, and ask them questions and actually give them insight or point them in the right direction, then they're going to come across stuff anyway, and it doesn't matter what they read. They're going to form some thoughts based on their family of origin, the culture they grow up in, and all the assumptions they have being a 21st century Western citizen and a Christian. And so I've got to commit to walking with them anyway, in that sense, right? So because people gain warped ideas left, right, and center just from their upbringing. And what happens when they read someone, and the person they read actually lends itself, like for instance, one of the things that I think we're contending with in prophetic ministry. I would be an advocate for God speaking and prophecy being alive and well today. Not everybody has to be, but that's fine, right? And there's a large segment of prophetic ministry that would teach that there are prophecies that are foretelling, and there's prophecies that are forthtelling. And so the prophecies that are foretelling are prophecies that, and I just came across this the other day. Like, so I know about this. It's been around for a long time. I've been involved in prophetic. Like I know Bethel's teachings. I've got, John Paul Jackson, I've been around for long enough to know a lot of the stuff that goes around in that sense. And so foretelling is predicting the future.
Sure.
Forthtelling is creating the future. And so it's
okay.
the idea is
Like speaking it out.
You're speaking it out. Yeah, it's the name it, claim it thing, right?
Sure. Yeah, and it's interesting because that's what I hear even worship leaders saying. I'm just going to prophesy this over the land.
Exactly.
Right now.
And so it's a thought that's entered into the common expression. And the idea that usually the undergirding idea is Ezekiel prophesying to the valley of dry bones, and the bones and the sinews spring forth and all of that. So look how powerful our words are.
Yeah. The blessed is he who says things not as they are, but as they should be. I can't remember the exact verse, but there's a verse there that's, I think it's New Testament, where it says about, saying, maybe it's not. I can't remember where it is, but there is something about, saying things
When
as
you
they
when
ought
you
to
can't
be.
remember, you just say it's in the Bible somewhere.
It's somewhere in the Bible. I don't think it was Bill Johnson. I think it originated in the Bible.
Yeah.
Or I don't think it was from Kenneth Copeland or Joyce Meyer, but I don't know. But
Well, you take these ideas, you stretch them to their limit, right? And you eventually break the principle, as if God wasn't the one causing the sinews to form, and it was a vision that it's not like they formed in front of him. It's a vision he had, and it was about the resurrection of the kingdom of God on the face of the earth, and it's about the church age. Like this isn't about Ezekiel creating the future by his words. It's about Ezekiel recognizing something that's happening, and he's given a special part to play in it. So as soon as you try and break that and extrapolate it, now you've got this concept of forthtelling, which enters into the vernacular of charismatic Christianity, especially. And so what happens is, now someone who struggles with pride, if they're not conscientious of the pride, they go, well, I can forthtell the future because my words create the reality. And so come learn from me and I'll teach you how to do the same thing. So I'm now rich because I prophesied that I was going to be rich. So now keep giving me your $500, $1,000 conference attendance fee, So it becomes so warped because the idea, while, okay, like pay attention to the words you say, is a good idea. And your words have the power of life and death, which is a good idea.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So speak words of life over people. And when you take the idea and stretch it to its breaking point, you get broken people that manipulate the idea. And so now I've got to work and contend with the way people have been formed, the way they think, and how they've been hurt, how they've been traumatized, the kind of wounds they carry from their childhood into adulthood. And this is where the teachings of the Desert Fathers I found insanely helpful, when the passions and the thoughts and all these things, your inner wounds that dictate and control you and give you structure for how to respond. So all of that to say, before I answer, how does someone not get into trouble? It's like someone doesn't get into trouble because they read the wrong book. It's because they come across the ideas and they don't have anybody to walk them through.
They're on their own.